And if I change it after it's selected to 2, it'll make it even smaller. So we do want it a little bit bigger and readable. I'm going to scale it back up using the scale tool. Probably somewhere in the realm of there is a good size. Try to put them in consistent locations. So if you start one and you're saying I want it centered at this point, or you can visually center it if you're good at it, but we don't want to see one way in the corner and one in the middle center. We want them all in similar locations. You can copy it kind of around with your ortho on, and then rotate it whichever way you need it on plan. And there's a number of ways to do that, and it depends on what type of drawing you're doing. So some people say you would want it readable where it turns with the drawing as it goes, and some they all want it one direction. I'm going to turn with the drawing as I go, but you won't notice it because there's not a lot of turning to be accomplished. So again, I can copy these for each of my base cabinets, but we'd have to have labels on our cabinets to know what they are. And these labels correspond with the labels that are in our specifications. So if this was a craft-made kitchen and this was a base with doors, then they probably have their own label where it would say like D base, door base, 42 inches. And it might be, you know, you could have double door base, single door base, et cetera, et cetera. So look for that labeling to be part of the manufacturer's specifications. Then, of course, I have my uppers as well, so I could copy these ones up and I could copy them over into place all the way through, and I would have successfully labeled things for my drawing. All right, so you can see they often do theirs centered, and in exceptions where there's a sink that's being placed, so they have to place it off to the corner. We want to show things like range hoods and ranges. We want to show our sinks, anything that's included in plan, but you do see the solid lining here, the ending of the base cabinets with dash linings, the solid face of the dishwasher to give an idea of the appliance being there, and the handles. Students often don't draw handles. Please try to draw handles for major appliances so that you can help delineate them from your cabinetry. Corner cabinets are usually just coming out and then drawing this 45-degree kind of chamfer for a lazy Susan, etc., etc. You would do that at the base cabinet, or if you just want them to turn the corner, there'd be empty space usually in this corner. So those are just things to keep in mind and wonder about how you draw them. You can always ask those kind of questions of me or also of Professor King. Okay, so for me, my sink base is going to be in one of these, so I'm going to have to move my label off to the side. And I don't want to confuse you. I'm going to turn my own snaps off for a second because they just really want to force that label. I don't want to confuse you again. I was just showing you how to create a label and place it. These would actually be 36 inch if they match up with my plan. When I check your homework, I'll be checking that your labeled sizes match up with the widths of your cabinetry. Same thing for the uppers, and it would have a different label. So it shouldn't be B for each of these. It should match up with your specifications. If I'm going to put my sink in here, we could go out and navigate to that website that I've included with the different symbols. So if we go back to our assignments, and I go to assignment 4, I want to say. I want to find the one where we have the website, and it's probably on the outside of 4. So we have CAD blocks. That's the one I want to click on. And then I'm going to click on it to get to the exterior link. This would be a case where it doesn't make a lot of sense to use these. Maybe they're really pretty blocks. So if I want the kitchen ones, I accept the cookies and I come all the way down to the bottom. I want Imperial download now. It'll open up my blocks. I say yes. And then I can move them into my drawing. Again, these blocks should represent the pictures that you're showing. So if you have a 6-burner stove and you show me a 4-burner, that's not okay. You could take this and turn it into a 6-burner easily, or you could use this one and modify it because it's closer to a 6-burning stove. But for me, I just want to get like a single base or double base kind of sink going. So I'm going to Control C this guy into my drawing and Control V him as close as I can in here for size. And let's see, it really, you should be checking against your manufacturer. So if I went Kohler, I don't know if I'm spelling it right, kitchen sink width. And I clicked on any model of a Kohler sink, it should be the image that's driving my design. And I could find that under more product info. When I scroll down, usually over here are all the measurements I need to know. So the depth is 8 inches, left and right, and the width is 15. So we'll say it's about, they're saying 8 depth, 15 all the way around, kind of square. So if I come back in here and I look at my guy, and let's do a measurement on this guy. What's his measurement? Turn my snaps back on by clicking on the button, come from the front to about in here. That would be 12, 19, so it's a little deep, but I would imagine it is something that exists, it just doesn't fit in here. So for what I'm doing, I need to get rid of this other side. I'm just doing a very baby little basin. I could make this wider. It's only 42, and I could look at the measurement of my sink and have that drive the width of my cabinet. Here, this is really big. So instead, I'm going to take this block and modify it for my own personal use. So if I explode this block, I can delete off the pieces that I don't need. I really just love the handles in the front, and I can modify anything else by drawing it to completion and then scaling it. And at this point, I should really start putting things on the correct layers. So this would be, I could have appliances, which incorporates my range, my dishwasher, my refrigerator, and even my sink, and put them all on a layer. Or I could do it later. I'll probably just keep drawing through so that I'm not wasting time putting things on layers, but yours need to be on right layers. This shouldn't be on a wall or 0. It should be on its own layer. So if I look at this guy, and we said we want to scale, and people were saying, let's review scaling about a reference. So if I do scale and I select the objects and I hit enter and I specify one thing, I can then click reference and I can do one side, and I'm going to say I want that to be 17. Okay. So this is a more usable size, and that means this line has changed to be 17 inches now. I'm going to move that into place with this up here. It's way more believable. And my label might be too big here. If I ever have to move it off to the side while I'm drawing, that's totally fine. So 17 was a pretty good realistic depth for a sink. I could move each of its side out and kind of modify it after. But knowing that I've got good handle sizes, etc., etc. So this is probably not a standard size, but it's super believable. And then move this to the middle and say I've got this giant basin now. Middle, kind of deconstructing it, right? We'll move our little nozzle piece because he really makes the look. Once you've exploded a block, you know, it's in tiny, tiny pieces, so you've got to be really good at what you're grabbing. So I could, you know, move this all into place, which takes a little bit of time. I could have deleted that out and not kept the curve and instead just made it into a square edge, etc., like with a fillet. So I could fillet the bottom edges. If we want them to be round, remember like this, we'd use a radius fillet. So if I went into my fillet and I said radius 2, enter, and then I selected a corner, that would get it to be a prettier corner. But remember, you always want to change it back to 90 because most often we're filleting walls. So if I click on fillet and I said a radius, that 90 degrees always 0, enter, and we're just resetting it for ourselves. So I could continue finishing my sink based off of the block that I built in, and I could fillet the front portion, and then I could put it on the correct line. And I want to think about then what's happening with these upper cabinets. I said over here I have some, over here I have some, but above this I just wanted like some fun shelves in here. Well, the sad day thing is that if there are shelves and they're equally deep, but they're not cabinets, then I'm not going to see all of this fancy detail. In reality, I can just delete that off. And maybe it would have been easier to just have used a very simple rectangle in the depth and size because those details are underneath the shelf and I won't see them. So I'm actually going to use trim right now to undo some of my drawing. But that's just, again, how do I bring a block in? How do I use it? And then this would be my sink that's falling underneath my shelf. So at that point, I could create my new layer for my appliances, which we'll use. And we'll say, you could say kitchen appliances or just appliances. And I want to make it active. And the layer settings are fine. So these lines all need to go on that appliance layer. Again, I can select all of them and I can click on appliances to move them. And then I could fill it off the rest of my block. Oh, I hit a lock. Notice if I'm having trouble moving or doing anything to a line, I just need to unlock it. Make sure it got moved to the appliance layer, and then I'm going to do my fillet. So that's what you'd see under the shelf. But unlike these, it's a long continuous shelf that's so high above this sink here. And the sink base is right there. So I'd still need to properly place the dishwasher. Usually the dishwasher is near the sink, but with so much room according to your guidelines. If you go back out to your homework, and we click on 6, we'll see we've completed all of this work, but I also include this link to the NKBA website with basic planning guides. So looking at access, thinking about dishwasher and how far close it is to things, thinking about refrigerators hitting into doors, all of these rules, the sizes of the triangle, 9'4", 26, blah, blah, blah. I've included a reference for you to be checking your work against. You're not technically held accountable for that in my class. Sometimes I will check it just as a double check for Professor King, but I want you to be thinking about it. Whether you're in 108 or not in 108, it's the best way to be developing your kitchen. Here we have this 42 inch or 48 inch. 48 inch is really great amount of space if you can give it at any time. Certainly because we have somebody who is in a wheelchair and that ample space is very useful to them. So I am going to minimize this. Now let's take a look at these lines. Right now we can see that their layer is being driven by blocks. So just for any of those white lines that are on the right appliance layer, we want it to read by layer so that they take on that gray property. And if we change the layer, it changes the color with it. So I've got a pretty complete kitchen in here. I could do a number of things with this space over here by the pipe chase that is empty, adding in other types of furniture, or even more cabinetry if I felt like it. So that's kitchen guidelines. The bathroom is going to be very similar, except for the depths are a little bit different. So we'd still dash the underside cabinets, and the depth would be 21 instead of 24 inches, which is referenced within the assignment this week. So drawing your bath must have 21-inch cabinetry, dashed lines for the cabinetry, unless it's an upper. 22 inches offset countertops because they're coming 1 inch over unless you pick a different depth for that. And solid lines. You need a bathtub or a shower combination, include toilet, sink, or sinks, all the things you'd want. If you had a vanity that has a special type of cabinet over it, you really want to detail these out so that they're nice plans and you're farther along in your design than not. Don't keep them extremely basic. All right, so all the rules apply. If I come in and I would say the same type of widths, but a different type of depth. So if this is her bathroom, I'm gonna move the label out of the way and think about what I would be doing in here and how I could keep this teeny tiny bathroom. For me, I'm going to say, can I have my bedroom and my bathroom? And what do I want to have? The window? Maybe I just kind of ignore this bedroom guy a little bit in here. Or I think about this wall differently out in here and have it be kind of angled because I gained a lot of space in here. So what if I create this unique hallway in here that is at this kind of strange angle that affords me some space, still my 5-inch dimension. I'm trying to think about how it'd lead into the kitchen and what that would look like exactly with my bedroom and the cutoff. I'm gonna do a weird thing. Sometimes I just get to have fun because I don't have the same kind of rules that you guys have. So we'll stop it. I'm gonna stop it like in here. Okay, so the rest of this is kitchen. This is the super dangerous corner that your kids are gonna run to and cut their head open because they're running through the house. They've still got about 5 foot in this area, and then it would just kind of lead in and around to this space. Okay, so there's this little hallway in here, maybe like a gallery wall with the doors coming off of it. I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to pause the recording and I'm going to do a bunch of the wall building work, which, except for the spots where I have the toilet, shower, or any other plumbing coming off of, are going to be 5 inches thick. For those other areas, they'll be 8 inches thick for plumbing walls. So it's going to magically look very finished in a minute here. Magic. So I took this wall and I added an edge to it, which this is a doable thing, by the way. You're just saying, I want this to be a cavity of space that adds to the walking path so it's not so sharp and makes the building feel more refined. It's just empty space back behind here that I've designated with a hatch. So nothing is there except for that wall. And then I have had this mimic the angle of that walkway to create my small bedroom space and then give myself a bathroom that's workable with its own window. The bedroom has a window. This would be really awkward though, just so you're thinking about that. Think about these kind of things. Students don't their level is pretty low. So I think it's like 24, 20 something up from the ground. So it would be, you know, the window would be behind the bed at this point, which is fine for me because I'm not actually designing the space. I just wanted to show a cool design for the room and the bathroom. Other things that couldn't be true that I see with students that I have done is this designates a sliding door and it has to have a cavity to slide into the left and the right. So this wouldn't work. Standard depth of a closet is 24 inches. It must be at least 24 inches to be a closet. That's free space from here to here. And then you offset your wall coming off of that 24 inches for any wall thickness, which would be that 5 inches. Mine is way deeper than 24. So it's like if you slid this open, there'd be a return wall where some things could be hanging if we wanted to. It's like you're hanging so far and you could fit a few more things tacked on coming out in front of the slide on this side. So it's kind of unusual and it's not physically possible. We'll be checking for the possibilities of things when we're grading these things. So just some things you'd catch. Now for the vanity, it's 21 inches deep. So I'm going to use my offset and I want to go back into my A-wall interior layer as my current layer. And I want to offset 21 inches. I drew a sneaky line here that Tikva didn't have. That's my depth of my vanity. And it has similar widths, as we said, of the kitchen. So you could have modules of 3 and 12. We're thinking 12. So most standardly, you could have 9. You could sometimes have 8, oddly enough. You can have 15, etc., etc. So what do I want to be going in here? I could have 2 30 wides, or I could just have one small little guy hanging out in the middle. I'm going to say it's a 5-foot run, whatever it is, just like open base cabinet. So I'm going to look at this and say, I don't want it to come all the way awkwardly over here and create this tiny space. I probably want to stop it somewhere in here, centered with the door, a little bit smaller. So I'll add a midpoint, and then I'll say offset. Let's see what a 48 would look like. So 24 actually. I go off 48. That's not bad. It's not a ton of negative space, plus a rug, plus I could have like a hanging unit in the corner, something to fill the space in. I can make a little bit bigger if I really wanted to. I've got two 24s. This is going to be my sink base though here. So I'm going to do this as this, and then I'm going to do an offset of what's a smaller cabinet, like a small bank of drawers that is to be 9 would still be too much, and 6 is teeny tiny for a module. I think I'm okay with this because of this awkward space. So I'm gonna fill it, fill it. Now, some of you will be buying vanities as like whole pieces that are modular from other companies, and that's totally fine, but you need to draw them to specification, which most likely will still have a 21-inch depth, but it might look a little bit different as far as like the countertop coming off of it, etc. So we're gonna do a 1-inch for the countertop all the way around these edges. I'm going to fillet them. And then again, this is my sink center that I have in here. And I'd say, that means if I have a circle, that's not like the most usable space, not gonna be around. That's why we usually have an oval. So if I come in here and I stretch it, let's say something more like that. I'm gonna move it into place and then manipulate it about its center. All right, so I could use my pick point to squat it up. That makes more sense to me. And then my measurement, we were in the teens, kind of 20s. Yeah, 18. That's not bad. So what if I offset 12 inches to find like the sides of my sink? So I have a center cabinet that is a sink base, and then these are sets of drawers to the side. So I have a 24-inch sink base cabinet, and then I have my sets of drawers to the side. And I could add handles and everything later, but this gives you a general idea of what's happening here. So at that point, I can grab all the interior lines in one fell swoop, and they're gonna get placed on lower cabinetry. Okay, then I'm gonna right-click them and use their properties, and I'm gonna change their line type scale to be 12 again. Okay, so there is my bathroom vanity minus the handles on the faucet that should be in here. But this is still really basic. Again, when you go to do your real final, and I know you're working on some for Professor King this week, and let's say we want any rugs eventually that you're gonna have in there. And again, if it goes under the cabinets, it's like it just stops, and that gives me the idea of there's a rug in front, and really I should have trimmed up all the way to this edge so I could trim that piece, the little ends off too. And then I have this guy in here, and maybe, you know, we want a rug for that area as well, but not round. And this would be a case where it'd be nice to have little filleted corners instead of that super sharp edge in there. And then in here, you know, do you want handrails or anything? Those are other details that should be included if you have them at the size and distance that they would be coming off of the wall. And I'm not going to review that right now, but we'll say 2 inches, enter for this wall, just to get something kind of believable. 1.5 inch. Right. And then I could add the return of the bars to the wall in here. I could add any of the details of if I have above my toilet any type of rack or shelf that I want to be showing in here. I could add that in that space. So the most change is the 21-inch offset. Make sure that you're putting your things on the correct layers, lower cabinet, upper cabinet. Make sure they're dashed if they're cabinetry. Make sure they're solid if they're countertop lines, and solid if they're upper cabinet lines. Be thinking about the plausibility of space and other unique ways that you can utilize space as you're drawing so that it really makes it feel thought through.